Meowdy y'all is the Cutting Corner podcast hosted by your resident catboy Keo, where we talk about video editing tips, tricks, and tactics to stay up to date in the competitive content creation world. Here with me today is 24-year-old Seattle-based high school football star turned leftist YouTube editing hunk, Noah Samsen. He's been the long-running editor for Noel Miller, as well as an editor amongst the TMG project. Noah, pleasure having you on the show today, man.
Gio, thank you so much for having me. That was a lovely intro. And yes, I was a high school sports star, and that's what I want everyone to remember me as in the future. So thank you for bringing that up.
Wonderful. I'm glad. I really just had to hammer that in right in the intro. So
yeah, if we could change the podcast logo to a photo of me playing football in high school, that would be, I'd prefer that. So let's do that.
Okay, we'll do that for today's episode specifically.
Talk to the producers.
So.
All right, cool. All right.
Yeah. So you and I have known each other for a long time, which might come as a surprise to a lot of people because, like, at surface level, I'm literally a Catboy VTuber and you are a leftist content creator now. So I would assume that that's not like the perfect Venn diagram that people imagine when they think about us, but
Catboys are notoriously right wing, so it's good that you're breaking from the mold in that sense. But yeah, we have known each other for what, like 4 years?
Least, yeah,
4 years, maybe more.
3-4 years at this point.
Yeah.
No, it would be 4 years because we met in 2018, I believe.
Oh, wow.
That is when we did our first, that's when we first started working with Noel, I believe. So
were we doing the stream channel?
I know I was. I'm not sure where you became involved, and we'll get to that, I'm sure. But
right.
I really kind of wanted to start our conversation by dialing it all the way back, talking about your pioneering, so to speak, in the YouTube space, all the way back in 2007 and even prior to that. For those in the audience that aren't aware, Noah used to be a very talented skit creator, should we say?
Yeah, sure.
And you produced some of the funniest videos I think I've seen on the platform to this day. I still go and look at those and try to wrap my head around what was going on in your own head.
Are you talking about the ones from 2007, like the very old ones, like when I'm a child?
The very old ones, yes.
Okay.
What was the creative process like making those, and how does that compare to the ones that you do now?
I need to take a moment to think about this because this is an awesome question. I haven't actually thought about it in a long time. So I need to like remember because it was literally 15 years ago.
Do you mind if we throw some on the TV screen?
Oh yeah, no, go ahead.
Okay, wonderful.
I think basically having access to like a little Vizio, or it was not Sony, like a little camcorder that had its own built-in editing, which was you could pause and play the recording. So like, I don't think you could trim things down, but you could start recording and then pause it, and then actually no, you could trim things down, that's right. But I think mainly it was having access to that, and then once I started like experimenting with it, I would like make these characters, come up with these ridiculous sketches, and I don't know like what that is based off of, if it was based off of like having watched movies and stuff, but I was literally a child, so it just started happening. And yeah, that was literally 15 years ago, but I was doing like sketches with multiple characters and just being silly and weird. And looking back, I'm so glad they're still on my channel because it's like the foundations for what I do now with regards to like editing and actually like performing in videos. It's like totally uncanny, the sort of resemblance. But in terms of my thought process, I really don't know. It was kind of like having a camera meant you could just start filming stuff, and then I just don't remember. It was so long ago. So.
No, I don't blame you that you don't remember it being 14, 15 years ago at this point, but I have to imagine that there was something about movies or even television at the time that stirred something in you that made you want to be creative, because obviously it wasn't just one or two things. It was a career that you started for yourself, really, without even knowing it. And it was all based on the creativity that you were spinning up in the moment as a child. And I have to imagine that stemmed from something.
Yeah. I don't know if I can point to a specific, I'm just like looking through these back now. I think it was like just being bored and kind of like having divorced parents and being like, all right, well, let's just fuck around.
Sure.
And not really having that many friends. I guess I did have friends that I would see at school, but like I was just at home messing around. And so,
sure.
And I mean, that's still how I am now. Like I have like two people I hang out with or would consider like really good friends in terms of like people that I know. And then besides that, I'm just at home working or at home watching or learning or creating. And so, yeah, I think that's probably a part of it, just being like alone with a camera and also like involving, like a lot of them have my siblings in them. So it was kind of like a little like thing where it was like a thing to do,
bonding experience.
Yeah, with my like sisters and stuff. So
I gotcha.
I guess a little bit of all that, if that answered the question.
It does. No, it does. Obviously, a lot of your creativity has been with you since a very early age, and that carried with you throughout high school. Taking your creative juices that you would get from creating skits and eventually doing things like, writing for your school publication and working with your school's production team, things like that. How did it all tie together and made you want to pursue creating content of your own or even for other people, as we know that it led into things like working with Noel and eventually music videos?
Yeah, I it's weird because when I got to halfway through middle school, I started getting really into sports. And in middle school, I still did multimedia stuff. Like we had these morning announcements we used to do. They would play on a TV and we do them every week. And I did it like quite a few of them in terms of like, we had this really cool multimedia teacher who was just like, I would be like, can I go fuck around on this green screen for this whole entire period? And she'd be like, go. And then I go and with my friends and mess around and be able to do that. And that was like the last time, it was 7th and 8th grade, that I actually did any of that stuff in an official setting. And then after that, it wasn't until after high school, because I was just full-time sports, like sports go, like multiple sports, every sport, all sport. And then by the time I went to college to play football, and it wasn't until after that I got involved. I mean, the way I got involved was not really through any kind of traditional orthodox like media, either courses or school. I went to school and studied film, but it wasn't film school. So it's not like I had a practical hands-on connection or even route to produce like short films and then work on things. I got involved through just like internet music video culture stuff. So for the specific question about like getting involved in like school and everything, it wasn't really ever there except for middle school. And I think that in a way for people that are wanting to get into stuff, I think it's like a story that is potentially helpful in the sense that if you weren't in a context where you were like working with media all the time, there are ways to like get involved, and like the internet is basically limitless. And I guess I was specifically lucky because it was a time when the homemade music video sort of movement was very strong. It was like Cole Bennett, Lyrical Lemonade, if you know about any of that. Yes. Young Tada is a guy from Seattle who was kind of like started the wave in Seattle doing like these homemade music videos that had like really cool effects, or like cool effects for being, homemade. And a lot of people took that and ran with it. And I did it for a while and I got really good at it, like in terms of editing and effects. And
yes, you did. You absolutely did. I was going to go into that a bit later, but
yeah. But so it was an untraditional route in that sense. So,
I had always figured, since I had known you, and had known that these videos were still obviously public, that there was some sort of connection between wanting to do skits and then eventually you doing, writing, and that those creative mediums would soon combine to what you did in your freelance world, but it just happened to be a coincidence.
Yeah. So in terms of like, I'm trying to think.
Like, you see where I would draw that conclusion, right? Like,
Yeah. So I guess in terms of like simultaneously while I was doing the stuff like for work with music videos, I was doing sketches and things. Right. And that was my first ever like experience with like social media success in terms of like making things and trying to like grow off of it.
Was the sketches?
Yeah, on Twitter, posting sketches on Twitter. And so that was literally just the remnants of what I used to do as like a child, and then bringing it to a modern context of like making a sketch with two characters that was commentary on something that I saw that was like weird, or just to say something. And so that is kind of how that developed, is like an outgrowth of what I used to do. And I did that simultaneously while doing the work stuff. And so it eventually coalesced into, now I make video essays or like commentary videos. And so I utilize, some of that stuff in terms of like sketch writing. If I incorporate those, mostly now what I'm doing is like I'm trying to stick more to stricter essays, and it's difficult because I never had practice, so I'm having to learn that. But at the time, it was a thing where I was just like, I started doing it and I don't really know why, and then I just kept doing it, and it really just sucks that that's how I have to explain it, but it just is.
No,
like,
that's okay. Sometimes you just keep riding the train.
Yeah, there's just very little rhyme or reason to my life, and that's how it always has been. So like I'll just wake up and be like, okay, I know there's like a handful of things that I have to do, like eat and drink some water, hopefully go pee, and then beyond that, it's like I gotta like remind myself what I need to do. So in that way, it's like kind of hard to articulate, but specifically with regards to how it came to be, it just kind of happened. So not very helpful for
a beautiful accident. No.
Yeah.
That's perfectly okay. I didn't expect a cookie cutter answer. I'm sure many people were as curious as I was how you went from A to B. That's all. Now, you spoke about your music video. I don't want to call it a phase because it was a beautiful phase if it was one, but you had an era in which you, I feel like, perfected a style that I hadn't known existed prior to discovering it through your portfolio. And with your permission, I'd love to just show people.
Yeah, go for it.
With your creativity and really the beauty of analog and how underrated it is in today's creative landscape, I suppose. I think really horror and homemade horror is the only pocket of popular media that still utilizes analog, but you really bring it to life in a way that I haven't seen many other editors do, if any. Hats off to you for that. But I would just love to know how it became your signature almost, because in all projects that you're involved with now, all of your projects have a signature look that I would be able to point out in a quick compilation of, quick cuts of edits. And visually, they're always stunning, but I'm very curious how that style came to be. If it was a happy accident, that's more than fine. I'm curious if there was a formula to that or how it came to be.
Yeah, okay. I really like kind of telling this story because it reminds me of like, I don't know, like learning shit about shit on the internet is really cool. But basically, I saw this post on Arcolect. This was probably in 2017. Arcolect is the Twitter engine that posts like artistic. It's like a bot that posts stuff like random artistic images, like GIFs or just images from like Tumblr and different places. And I saw one that had this crazy look. It was like these kind of wavy lines on like a TV screen that were like really scattered and just a funky, totally analog, totally like I'd never seen anything. And this was right around the time I was starting to like learn about effects, and I had no idea what it was. I tried to search, like I tried to like follow the links back and see who it was, and it just led me to all these dead Tumblr pages and everything. And it wasn't until about a year after that I saw another similar thing, and I researched it further, and I was able to find out that it was like analog video synthesizers, and it's like a whole world of this artistic technology that I knew nothing about, even having been like doing music videos for a while. I didn't see anyone using it. I didn't see any of those like real analog effects. It was in the stuff that was being made. It was mostly like After Effects plugins and grain overlays and things like that. And so I was like, dude, I need to like somehow utilize this because it like the aesthetic is so unique and so like
there's nothing like it. Yeah,
it's so real. And so I ended up picking up an analog synth, and now there's lots of resources. I mean, there were back then, but now it's kind of like not mainstream, but it's like an established area of practice, which is like you can build these analog synths. There's lots of tutorials. There's places to get them. There's a lot more people selling them. But I got one. I just started using it for these different projects, and the first time that I used it, I was really like excited for the way the look turned out. Was on this music video where I just like I fed like an HDMI into an analog into the synth, and then I plugged the output into like a big CRT TV that I bought from like OfferUp. It was giant. I had to I like broke part of my car door getting into my car, but I set it up and used this like TV texture. I like ran this logo through the TV screen. I filmed it with my camera, and the look that it created was so unique, and like everyone that saw the video that I made was like, how did you do this? And I was like, dude, I don't even know. And I didn't want to tell anyone.
What's the plugin? Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I can't like kind of give away the sauce. Like I was definitely very much like kind of protective of the sauce for a while. I mean, looking back, it's so funny because it's like everybody does it, and like I'm happy to like share, like talk about stuff, but it was definitely like, you know, I was younger, I had kind of the ego like, oh, this is gonna be my shit, and basically that's how it happened. Is like I learned about this technology and I started using it in a similar way that I had a camcorder when I was a kid and just started using it, like experimenting with technology. And I guess it's weird because they talk about like, you don't need a nice camera to do XYZ to start like a podcast. You don't need nice XYZ, but like there's another side of it where like if you're wanting to experiment and stuff, you can find things that like truly push like what you're able to visualize and understand with what you're working on. So
absolutely,
synthesizers were that. And so yeah, I just started using it in music videos, and now like I try to incorporate it when I can into title cards and things. When I with even my YouTube videos, like I'm definitely doing it for this video that I'm working on now because it's like a big video, but it does create like a sort of just sort of a like a you know, it's a recognizable aesthetic of grain that's not, you know, it's genuine, like it's like a real,
right? Absolutely. It's definitely, it's hard to put into words, but it's certainly not like a filter that I could just apply in After Effects. It really does have a specific look to it. I don't know if I would be able to write on paper what that specific difference is, but if I were to put a comparison of a generic VHS filter from After Effects and put it next to something that you've created with a similar tone, I'm sure people would be able to tell the difference.
I think it's a combination of things. It's depending on the synth you use and depending on the analog, like the way it transfers, you'll get something different every time. And so specifically what I've noticed, like the thing I like the most is the way colors bleed together and pixels mesh together, and it sort of adds, it's not even like a layer over top, it's like the entire the base of the image is changed in a way that you can't change back. I think there is a sense of permanence. Like when you make these things, you make the composition and then you run it through the thing, whatever it looks like for that one, it's never going to look like that again. Like you can try to recreate it, you have the knobs, there's a bunch of knobs and different things that adjust the colors and the saturation and settings and the lines and the intensity, and it's really cool. There's like a lot of different knobs, but once you make that thing, it's done. And so there's a permanence that makes it so like I'll just like, you know, with one logo run through it for like an hour of just different experiments and play around. And so I think it is that permanence and just like in terms of the actual look, the sort of the bleeding and the informality, like it's basically, it looks shitty and that's good. Like it looks
no, absolutely
like worse and that's better. And if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. So yeah, another thing that kind of ties into that that I wanted to ask you was there being sort of a concrete tone and dial for everything in After Effects, especially things like filters, such as what you can create via analog, right? Is there something that you specifically prefer about creating with analog that you cannot get with, you know, adjusting parameters in After Effects?
I think it is the spontaneity of like you make something and then however it looks at that time is how it's only going to look like that right now, and you can try to recreate it. But I mean, it's definitely like I'm pretty hyper focusing on my love for analog, but like having parameters and capabilities in software is like, you know, huge part of what makes, you know, it possible to do the things we do, like to be like flexible and create things.
Of course.
It's different things, right? It's like working on a composition that you're going to put through analog. You can do a ton in After Effects in terms of animating or compositing and things like that. And then once you take it to like add that final texture, it's like a different, it changes it in a way that's like just like special. So it's everything, you know, at once, like
so it's a bit of like a beauty in not knowing what you're gonna get,
right?
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding that correctly.
Yeah, no, you got it.
Obviously, you have done tons of side work outside of the creator space as we know it on YouTube, right? But for what a lot of probably my immediate audience would be familiar with as far as your work goes is your work with Noel. And, you know, as we said earlier in the podcast, 2018 is kind of the year that I believe we both came into contact with Noel. Do you remember what it was specifically about Noel that led you to working with him? Did he reach out to you, or was it, just by chance? What was the situation, if you don't mind me peeling back the curtain?
Yeah. So when I was making comedy sketches, I had a few of them go pretty viral in like 2017, mid to late 2017, and I had a few people find me through those on Twitter, and one of the people was Noel, and I started like kind of making content, and then eventually I think like he followed me on Instagram, and I posted a visualizer that I had made for an artist, like a music artist. They paid me to make this like logo for them. It might have been actually a video editor. Let me just like a really quick look at that. I'm curious.
Sure, yeah.
Oh yeah. So it was for the rapper Icy Twat. It was like a logo, a TV texture VHS kind of logo thing. And so Noel DM'd me when I posted that, and he was like, "Yo, we're on tour right now." He was on tour with TMG, and we're about to do a show like this weekend. And could you make something like this for our logo, basically, or like to open the show, to have like this aesthetic? And I was like, "Fuck yeah!" And it was like super last minute, and I remember being like hella nervous because I had never talked to him, I don't think. And it was like, it's like a YouTube star, like this is a big celeb guy, and I was like, oh shit, I need to do this.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And so I grinded it out, and like I worked super hard to make it like as crazy as I could have, as like my abilities would allow me to do. And then I mean they ended up using it, and I think they still use it for a lot of things, just like the TMG logo with the lines. But after that I started doing more stuff for TMG, like artistically, aesthetically, and eventually it wasn't too long after that Noel said, "Hey, I have a YouTube video, do you want to edit this?" And then I was like, fuck yeah, let's do it. And then I remember in those early days of like content editing being like going super fucking hard, like so many cuts, so many sound effects, edits, memes, trying to like pimp it out, because it's like you're doing a tryout, like for the fucking
of
like
course.
if you're trying out for an NFL team, you gotta put on a show. And so I look back and kind of cringe, because like obviously it's like a refined skill. You need to like go hard and experiment in order to learn how to like scale back and like really,
of course, hindsight's 2020.
Yeah. But so yeah, I mean like Noel just started like throwing me projects, and then eventually I started working on his stream channel for a bit, and now we've been basically, I think we did a full year of a project a week or more. Mm-hmm. And it's been like my consistent work, and it really helped to have like, he got a production assistant who's like really on top of projects, because like a lot of times like there've been times in the past where like for whatever reason I'm like literally just procrastinating or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I gotta push back, and Noel's like so chill. He's like, dude, don't even worry about it, it's never a thing. And so having like a third party to be like, all right, you shitheads, look, we gotta
nudge, right.
We gotta put stuff out, so you guys need to stop. Noel, you need to just like tell them to work, and you need to just not be a lazy shithead. And so having that has been good, because like in the past, like I mean, you've probably experienced this where like you're in bed and you're supposed to be doing the edit.
Absolutely, yes.
There's a certain level of anxiety, and like as the night closes, it's like 11 p.m. You're like, dude, we pull all-nighters all the time, it's no big deal. And then it's 1 a.m. and you're like, dude, we pull night. And then all of a sudden you're like, fuck me, dude, I gotta push back. And having to send that text where you're like,
hey man,
yo, can we push back?
Yeah.
After the third day, it's like a mix of shame and also relief, because it's like if you buy that extra day, it's awesome, but it's so unsustainable. And so
yeah,
that's in like the unofficial editing world, where you have like, where there's no, people are doing shit on the internet, there's no oversight in the terms of like
West,
how
man. Yeah,
it's the Wild West. So like, and you're dealing with creators, some of them they won't pay you well, or like they are really sort of nitpicky with their directions or what have you. And I've been lucky because Noel's like been just like such a good person to work with like all throughout this time, so I'm super blessed in that regard. But it definitely like that has changed over time in terms of like having someone to like keep things moving, as well as having like a good working relationship. So that's kind of the story of how it came to be, and basically what we've been working on
ever since then. Yeah. So all the content that you've made on both the main channel and the side channel has been wonderful over the last several years. There's not a single thing that gets uploaded that has in the description edited by Noah Samsen that I do not watch. definitely a new style on the channel since my departure, and I could not be happier because it is a completely different style, and I'm really glad that he elected to, instead of emulate an old editor's style, to just run with what the current editor's style is like. There's a lot of creators that will ask if they can have their newly hired editor replicate an older style that used to be on their channel, and not every editor I know can handle that work. But in this case in particular, I'm really glad that you were left to your own devices, so to speak, and that he let your style develop and breathe, so to speak. And there are so many quote unquote Noah edits that I can name off the top of my head now that are just kind of like in jokes between me and my friends whenever we watch Noel's videos.
What are those? What I'm curious. What are some of those?
Sure. So there, I think my favorite one that I could list right now is probably the verbal outtakes that you keep in and you caption. Those are probably the best edits that aren't intentionally made. You know, obviously, aside from like the sound effects that you never abandon, the nice shot, of course. Man, you've really been using the Wii sound effect for like years now.
Oh,
it's
I
crazy.
swear, Nintendo's gonna literally harvest my organs next week. Like,
dude, I'm surprised I haven't gotten a legal argument from Noel at this point, considering how much Nintendo music I put on his second channel.
Oh yeah,
dude, that whole Nintendo thing's a completely different can of worms. But yeah, no, just your editing style that you brought to the table is definitely unlike any other React content that I watch on YouTube. Because like, I mean, obviously I work for a React channel, as it currently stands, and I've worked with even more people that do React content outside of that, and none of them really have the style of edits that you do. And I'm really glad, and I hope no one replicates that or attempts to replicate it, because it's so unique to me. I'm curious as to know if there was something about those edits that made them eventually take the shape that they did. Is there a reason that you edit any of the memes that we've gotten accustomed to the way that you do, or did they just seem to be the best way to do them and they've just been running jokes ever since?
I think, yeah, so some of them are that, like the one you mentioned where there's an outtake of Noel saying like, what the but, like he says just some nonsense, but then you caption it close to like what he kind of says, and it's like a long, awkward, drawn out, like what the fuck kind of feeling. Yeah. I think like a lot of that started out just by being like, this outtake is so weird, and if I can like use this somehow, that would be awesome. And then so you just like piece it together, and you watch back, you think, okay, that makes me laugh, hopefully it will make someone else laugh because I'm gonna use it, and if it works, it works. And like a lot of people, like I do see that comment often, which is like the outtakes where there's like a caption are like my favorite edit or whatever, and that to me is so cool because it's like that's just a direct extension of something that I thought was funny. And so right. Once it starts, it does kind of become an in joke only in the sense that like Noel's always having those outtakes. Like his videos are pretty off the cuff, but he's pretty good at like articulating what he means. There's just like he's gotten definitely better over the past year of like in terms of having a bunch of takes. He's pretty efficient in that regard now. But there are still some moments like that and it's like a unique thing because like I've worked with other people and the outtakes are just wouldn't ever be able to be used in that way. But something about the way Noel is like, how Noel is just like pretty like dry and kind of understated, but also like can have like kind of like punchier stuff. But like it just works, and I think no, absolutely, yeah. It is a case of like you just learn what works and then if it's something you like and if it's something they like, you just keep doing it and yeah. I noticed that you bring that style of meme to your own channel, not to a T, but I noticed that you do something very similar on your own video essays. Is that an extension of you just finding it funny still and you trying to apply it, to your own content, or is that finding success in, doing it for Noel so you think it would be funny for your channel? I think it's more the former. I edit them. I edit his videos and whoever's videos usually are the same that I would edit mine because it's like whatever I think would be funny to an extent. Like there's some things that I will try on my own channel that are like I got people were commenting on I think it was Noel's like second to last video or last video where he says something, or there's a video clip of someone saying something dumb and then I edit in like it's like Peter Griffin saying like damn, bro, you got the whole squad laughing. And it's a photo of like the Family Guy family all staring, and it's like a top text, bottom text thing. And like, I think like stuff like that is like, I'm definitely pushing it, because that's like pretty, it's like a kind of like a triple layer of irony and people having like depending on what level you are interpreting that at, it could be extremely cringe or hilarious or just like bad or like I guess it couldn't really be seen as offensive, but it's just like weird shit. So it's definitely like sometimes I toe the line, but stuff like that on my channel, I'll just do it and I don't give a shit. I don't give a fuck. Like I'll just like, one example, I'm so excited about this edit and it's so stupid, but I'm so excited for it. There's a line in this video essay where I say like, if you guys don't do this, I will go sicko mode, and I'm not going to explain what that means. And then it cuts to like a gif of Travis Scott like going like holding the microphone with the flames in the background, you know, where he's like doing that sort of thing. But I play it at like 10% speed, and it's like two frame, it's like a frame every second, like 1 frame per second or 2 frames per second. Okay. And then like it's just silent except for there's like a quick little like what's that song, like Making My Way Downtown, the first piano, like da 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 da. So like I just took like a third of a second of that song and put it right in the middle, and I'm beautiful. Like it's shit like this that like I don't know how that comes to be on the timeline, and it sounds so stupid, but I watch it back and I cannot stop laughing. Like it is the funniest thing to me, even though it's just like like I don't know if it's like completely like if it's going to like people are going to be like literally click off the video or what, but that's kind of like when you're in the zone where you're just cutting up and you come up with something like that. Like it's such a good feeling. And yeah, so like I guess to answer the question, like I just make stuff that I think is funny.
Yeah, I mean that's literally what I would define as a Noah edit. So yeah, no, that's beautiful. I can't wait to see that for one. But
I'll send you the timestamp so you don't gotta watch the whole bullshit video.
Oh, wonderful. So diving more into your personal content creation, right? What was it exactly that gave you like the push to go content, not necessarily to create content full time, but to really pursue it at the very least? Because it's clear that like, at least I can tell from when you were, passively just working on like music videos, doing edits for Noel, to when I noticed you really started to hit the gas on the whole editing for yourself thing. You know what I mean? And start to sharpen your video essay tools, your skill set, so to speak.
Yeah. So I remember specifically what started it. Cause yeah, you said like I did music videos and stuff for a long time, content editing, and I did YouTube on the side. Like I would post a video every like year or like every 6 months, and it would be just some shit like, I should post on YouTube now because social media means you gotta have to be consistent or whatever the fuck. And then after that you post and it doesn't do well and you get depressed and you just don't post again for 6 months. It's kind of like that cycle. But what made me kind of go full time is about 9 months ago, I started using TikTok a lot. I forget what got me onto the app, but I remember seeing a post on there that was like this weird morph art piece thing. And I like looked up how to make one. It went really viral. And so I looked up how to, it's from a website called Art Breeder. Art Breeder is like an AI, like data moshing thing where you can like input images and create these face morphs. And so
it's so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool technology. I started making those and then uploading them to TikTok, and they started going viral. And I remember I got like, I'd post one and I would wake up and it would have like 3 million views, and I'd be like, what the fuck? This is crazy. And so this was around 9 months ago, and I basically through that experience rediscovered that like algorithms, like social media algorithms, are a system. And so like if you aren't finding success in what you're doing, then it's not like it's not because of the algorithm, it's because of something that you're like, it's because of like something about like what you are doing is not working with the system that you are trying. And so basically this is after like 4 years ago having found success on Twitter with sketches and not knowing and like when I burnt out, not knowing how to like continue that into like a career in like media or social media, like posting basic videos or whatever, because I burnt out and then not know how to recreate that success. It's like going viral is like really weird in that regard, but also like rediscovering that when you use these tools and you go viral and now you have some sort of grounding upon which you can build like your understanding of how to do it. Basically, I went from that. I made a YouTube video about that experience, not necessarily going viral, but just making the art breeder, because it was really interesting to me. And then after that, I was like, oh, I could just try what I did there with YouTube, because like, you know, I've always wanted to do YouTube. It was always like, okay, I'll get to it eventually, or like maybe because I'm, you know, linked in a bunch of YouTube videos as an editor, like people go to my channel, and that, I mean, that never works. Like it doesn't give you any actual traffic, right?
Not as much as people wish they did. Yeah.
I mean, you get people wanting to like hire you, but that's it, and that's fine. That's the whole purpose. But so I just started like experimenting, and I was watching a lot of TikTok at the time, and I'd find these weird guys that were like fucking just weirdos, and I would like make videos on them, just making fun of them or whatever. Very kind of like I'd like start filming, and then, you know how commentary videos are, where it's like it's clearly like just off the cuff, and there's a lot of cuts and stuff. But basically I just kept doing that and experimenting, and then eventually I think what got my channel going was getting into the politics stuff, but I guess that's like a different sort of area of the question. But in terms of like getting started, it was like rediscovering that like social media is a system, and also that like you can just experiment, and as long as you like keep going, like I just told myself, one video a week, put some shit out. It doesn't have to be good, it just has to be like, you know, it just has to be something that you can like get some feedback on for in some regard, you know?
Right. Like I can figure this out, I just have to pace myself. Right.
Yeah. So it was that whole process, and now, I mean, getting a YouTube channel off the ground is fucking difficult, man. Like it was a weirdly unique set of factors that allowed me to get to the point where I could like post consistently. But like I don't know how anyone else would do it, because like I had a uniquely like free time of like I didn't work that much, and like I was finished with school, and so I was just kind of chilling, and I had all these creative tools at my disposal, and that's like, I'm very lucky in that regard. That's basically how it got started. And then it wasn't until about like 5 months ago that it really took off. I think I had 5 months ago I had around 5,000 subs, and I'm almost to 150.
That is fantastic, man. Congratulations. No, seriously,
Thank you.
Is amazing. Wow. So I have to imagine that like the content that you write now, literally right now, is like so much more involved than your first few videos that you did that involved like, you know, creative writing. How much would you say that goes into your writing now, as far as like, you know, scripting goes, research, you know, all the above, versus probably your oldest scripted content? I
mean, so the first video essay that I really tried to do was the video I did about Jake Paul and his like sexual assault allegations. And it was just so weird because I had never done that much writing, and I wanted to like talk about this, and I didn't know how. And like, you always think like, you know, YouTube, you watch it, you're like, oh, that's you just sit in front of a camera and start talking, and some people are good at that, some people aren't. But like,
formatting is so hard.
some people are like genuinely good at that and can like who's the guy, like Moist Critical? That's a guy who can just talk, and it's like amazing every time. But
sure.
like for me, it was like learning how to like try to like articulate my points and try to pace like what I'm saying. And so I remember in terms of like my actual process, how it's changed over time, it hasn't much. I've tried to like improve it in terms of like structure and giving myself more time to like make sure what I'm making is good and makes sense. And I think like definitely over the last like few months of being like having grown enough to where like things that I'm doing are like having effects on like other people, like in a sense of a community. Like you know, I see there's topics of conversation in certain communities that I am either involved in or not, and so there's like after effects, and there's ways that everything connects that you learn as you go. But I guess like now my main focus is just trying to be as clear as possible with what I'm saying, and substantiate what I'm saying with like
leaving nothing up to ambiguity.
That's my main focus right now, is clarity in my writing, but also like humor as well, developing like trying to like mesh in the type of humor that I'll incorporate, which depending on like how like absurd or just like dry or you know, dunky or like punchline, like there's different like approaches. And I'm not like, I don't like know comedy theory or anything.
Sure.
It's just more of a, again, like experiential, like you just try something, you make it work, you do it again if it works, and that's it.
Yeah. I have to imagine that working with creators that are literally comedians has to have some sort of like inspiration in your writing at some point, right?
Oh, for sure. It took me like super long to like figure that out, that aspect of like when I'm watching Noel while I'm editing, I'm like, I see like how like the different things that he's doing, like callbacks and different like approaches to like just making funny metaphors or comparisons or being unnecessarily descriptive. Or I remember like one person I think about a lot is Felix from Chapo, who's like a Chapo Trap House, the podcast. Like the way there's a type of comedy that you hear that's like so funny as soon as you hear it and you know it's funny because it's like specificity, like you're describing something that is like using like a number of descriptors that makes it so like such a unique thing to hear, and it's so funny. And like so it's like all these different influences of learning like what makes me laugh and then trying to incorporate it. And like I've tried to do stand up, makes me nervous as shit. Maybe I'll try again. I'm like in LA now, so like there's definitely, you know, clubs and stuff, but it still makes me hella nervous, so I might just stick with the internet shit for a while. But it is just a case of like, watching Noel and whoever else, there's definitely some things that I pick up on. I think like probably one of my biggest comedy inspirations is like Reggie Watts.
Oh, okay.
Who's like a musical performer. And a lot of it is so absurdist and like dry and just like it's like when he performs, it's like, I mean, people know him and love him, so like it's definitely, and he's like, you know, obviously really good at what he does, but he's talked about how like depending on the crowd or like in the past he's tried things and he'd just bomb and bombing when you're doing things that are like you're not even like really making jokes, you're just kind of like doing this weird performance thing. It is like nerve-wracking, and so like the stuff that I find extremely funny, other people might not, and so like you have to kind of incorporate that. But I guess the point being, like, if you're feeling uncomfortable in terms of something you want to try, then that's a good sign. Like, as cliche as that is, like it means like even like with an edit, I suppose you could apply that to it, which is like, if you are worried, that means you're onto something in terms of like the artistic expression or like the actual workflow, you know?
No, absolutely. Yeah. No, that's a good way to phrase it. How about your editing inspirations? Like, were there any creators or editors, for that matter, that you really take a liking to and try to incorporate their, not necessarily maybe a style, but at least some things that they do or habits that you notice, and try to incorporate that into your own content or other people's content to make it better? Yeah,
so there's a few things. In terms of like my OG inspirations, it has to be like Vic Berger from Tim and Eric, and I guess Doug, DJ Doug Pound, or he's the other Tim and Eric editor. In terms of like, I mean, there's so many edits that I could look back to and point to that inspiration that I do, but that's like more of the foundational stuff. And then in terms of YouTube content, that was a recent video that I watched, or a few videos where I watched, was like, oh shit, this is like really kind of like, you watch something sometimes and you're like, yeah, this person's like good at what they do, and it's like inspiring. Right. And I get a lot of inspiration outside of YouTube from like sort of absurdist like TikTok things that are just like, you know, the type of shit where it's just like like completely like incoherent, but at the same time, that was unhinged.
I think I'll add that to my repertoire.
Right. And edits from Instagram, things I see on Twitter where it's just like very sort of like visceral and like I've made it a habit to never use actual PNGs, like clear PNGs. I always just screenshot the checkered PNGs.
I've noticed that it's always the better decision.
I love doing that because it's like a strict rule. Like I will never use a clear. I mean, unless it really calls for it. But I think that's such a funny, like stupid funny thing to do. But yeah, a lot of like absurdist TikToks, and then I'm trying to think if there are probably plenty of other editors. I mean, like all the editors I know from the internet, like you, like Larry, like Prezzo. I mean, you guys are like powerhouse editors. So like, I guess I take inspiration in the sense of like I don't know, just seeing the amount of work that you guys put out and how consistently good it is. It's like I definitely get inspired in that regard. There are like, I'll stumble across YouTube videos that are editing like really well, and I'll just like I'll be inspired for a second. I'll be like, okay, I got to step my game up basically. And I get that same feeling from YouTube videos, like actual, full productions, full video essays. I'll be like, damn, I've kind of been, bullshitting, not gonna lie, the last few videos that I've made. So like, let's try and remember this while we move forward. And so,
sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's a ton of really talented people that I've met online and that I know whose work I really respect. I can't think of like specific edits and stuff.
No, it's all good. Yeah. I just wanted to know if there was like general inspiration, or if you're very much the type of person that's like, I inspire myself, and I work with what I've got, and yada yada. You know what I mean? Like that, which is totally fine. That, I think that's a very valid way to create. But I think the best things come from a mishmash of being inspired from a multitude of things. So
right, exactly.
Okay, so we actually have some really great questions, I think. So the first one is coming from Cartoon Killjoy, who asks, Noah, I know you have a lot of great commentary and leftist content on your channel. How do you strike the balance between the serious topics and the humorous style of editing? The video comes out great every time.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very nice. And I guess like I've learned, I guess over time, it's kind of like a balance of sincerity and irony. Like when I'm talking about things that like emotionally charge me, or like that I feel like require a certain level of sincere commentary, then I'll just like put that in there, like talking about critical race theory, parents that are freaking out because they're like low-key racist and being weird. Like I'll put sincere commentary on like I'll be like, dude, what you're doing right now is hella racist and it's really fucked up. And like I'll incorporate that, but then like on top of that, because there's a certain context where that commentary, there's a certain context to that commentary where people watching like will understand what I'm saying already. You can layer comedy in there. So like it's a serious topic, but you are also taking into account like how people interpret what your commentary on that topic, and it like it's kind of a weird balance to strike, because like I remember I did a video about Jake Paul's sexual assault allegations, and that's like an extremely serious topic, and I said some jokes in there and did some shit that like I look back and like, dude, why did I definitely not like cool that I did that? But again, like every video you're trying to learn and get better, so like I don't like hold that against myself, but I do definitely cringe. Like I look back and I'm like, ooh, why did I say that joke there? Like that's like not cool to do there.
Sure.
But so I'm glad that the balance people seem to say that the balance is good, but I guess it is a thing where like at a certain point of absurdity with like moral like commentary, you have to like say like, all right, let's try and like relieve this situation for a second before we dive back into how shitty this is,
Yeah, there's no, with a lot of the content, it's like a lot of the comedy that you bring to the table is like, God, this is fucked cosmically. You know what I mean? Like, it's not so much laughing at the situation itself, more as like, oh my God, I can't believe we have to sit here and, not review, but we have to look at this content and
just 30 minutes of apologizing. Like, I'm sorry, I have to show you, I'm so sorry. And yeah, it's like, I remember like, one thing I think about often is like Cody and Noel's like earliest commentary videos that went super viral, like all their that's cringes and stuff. There's a certain element of those that is like what they are presenting is usually so cringe and bad, and like and again, this is a time where it hadn't really been done in this manner, but it was so like viscerally like uncomfortable that it doesn't really matter what they like were to say afterwards. It carries itself, and it just so happens that they are like incredibly funny and like have great chemistry and everything. There's a certain like built-in expectation that what's being presented is already so absurd that it doesn't really matter. Like, it's not that the commentary doesn't matter, it's that like you're in a context where everyone knows what's going on. We're looking at something that's bad, and the only way to relieve it is to just say something that's like remotely like funny, or you're trying to be like to make a comparison, whatever. And so I think about that often in terms of like what the approach is like. But
yeah, the series That's Cringe specifically, I feel like it scratches the itch of wanting to expose yourself to like cringe things, as weird as that is, that our brain says, yeah, click on that. That's going to be the worst thing you've ever seen. Please, I need to see it. and then also having that splash of water on your face of, you know, a funny joke that it's followed up by. Whereas I feel like a lot of people would prefer to watch That's Cringe over, you know, 15-minute cringe compilation of TikToks. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah. Oh God. Do people watch those?
oh yeah. I mean, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh.
Which is, to me, just another form of torture. But okay. So next question is from Camille or Camille. I'm not sure which one. I think it's Camille.
Oh, Camilla, that's my one of my mods, my Discord and YouTube. What's up, Camilla?
Shout out Discord mods, bro. What do you think is the most important skill set / background for an editor? And feel free to interpret the question any way that makes sense.
Severe depression and mental illness. I don't know. That's a good question.
Shout out mental illness.
Shout out mental illness. I think like it helps to be a visual, like I don't really know how I would answer this question in any manner that could be like helpful other than like, I guess, yeah, if you have a background in working with either things that are visual, or if you would consider yourself a visual learner, or music, like if you feel like you have a sense of rhythm, like a lot of what editing is just it's like composition. It's like feeling the timing of something and feeling what sounds and feels right. And so I would say all of those things that I like, you know, I used to play instruments when I was a kid. I used to do video stuff, like any of those number of things of like creative expression are things that manifest in the actual like work of video editing. Mm-hmm. And so if any of those things are things that you feel, then that's great. But if they're not, it's not as if you can't like learn to edit if that's what you want to do. Because I know, like, you know, there's a huge need for good, you know, stream editors and video editors. And that's a whole other topic of like stream editing and like how low-key demanding that is. It's kind of a thankless job in a way, it seems like to me, but depending on the creator. But I would say, yeah, just like if you feel connected to media in any capacity and editing is what you want to do, you'll probably just go for it and you'll probably be good. So I don't know if Camilla was asking because she's thinking of being an editor or what, but if you are, do that shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a good answer for anyone regardless. But thank you for the question, Camilla. Really appreciate that. Dr. Reed says, how is the cat? Okay, can we please use the cat's name?
The cat's name is Babe.
Yes.
And she is good. She I just let her in. She's being very needy lately. She she sleeps right next to me. Sometimes I wake up and she's sleeping on my chest and it's really cute. But she's doing good. Yeah. She has diabetes, and so I give her insulin twice a day with her meals. And learning to do that has been a fun little adventure. And other than that, I mean, she's 15 years old, but like the vet has been like, yeah, she's super healthy other than the diabetes, and the diabetes is being treated by the insulin. So she's really good.
That's
and
awesome.
She's like really warming up to my roommates. I was worried about, because like it was just, I moved in with my grandma to go to to live there while I went to college, a local college. And it was my grandma, her dog, and her cat, and Babe was the cat. And like I lived there for a while. My grandma ended up passing away, and then it was just me and the cat living there. The dog moved to my dad's. And so like I've known her for, you know, many years. And then I brought her down to California with me, and she's still going, and it's a good time.
Wonderful. Oh.
Yeah.
I think I was gonna get emotional on the podcast. No, that's
Straight
really
up.
great. I'm really glad. Dr. Reed also had included in that question if we could have more of Babe in Noah's videos.
Actually, that's, you know what, I was just considering adding a little outtake to the very end of this video I'm working on, where I have Babe in it, and I'm gonna do that now. Actually, I'm just gonna record and be like, ooh, look, just for that person.
Thank you, Dr. Reed.
Because I was already thinking about Dr. Reed. Yeah, let's do it.
Lufty asks, how and when did you get started as an editor, and what kind of video / content did you start with? Well, I think we have established what kind of content you started with, but do you remember who your first gig was with?
Yeah, I guess like outside of, I think my first actual YouTube commentary video was literally Noel, which is kind of like OP that I got to start at that level. But
that's crazy.
I think my first edits were, it was just someone.
Some music artist?
The first edit that I did that I started working with a director named Kenny. Kenny H from New York. Shout out to Kenny. And he was like doing a lot in the music scene, music videos. He would do these videos with like a GoPro. He'd film these music videos, and it was all this really like raw, cool footage. And I started working with him a lot, and we did a bunch of videos. And I think like most of the early things that I took on as commissions for edits were from Kenny, and it was just like different artists in New York. And some of my favorite work that I've done, like Icy Twat, are some of the edits that like I really fuck with. And they're also artists that I like used to listen to a ton at the time, and I still like do from time to time. And so yeah, just like a lot of different projects in New York basically for editing. And then yeah, my first commentary video was I'm pretty sure Noel.
So a lot of local stuff, actually?
Yeah. All my music video stuff was like Seattle, Tacoma area artists. My first person ever was a artist from my high school in Gig Harbor.
Oh, cool.
Stocks, but it was like after high school. They were like older than me, but they did music, and they're like, yo, do this shit. And I was like, fuck yeah. So.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. Well, thank you for the answer. Hopefully that answers your question, Lefty. Heather asks, do you find editing your own content to be super different from editing someone else's? Like, do you think you scrutinize the content more or doubt your own decisions more, et cetera, et cetera?
I think I'm probably more, I scrutinize more because I have the flexibility to do that for my own. Like I can just like take as long as I want theoretically. Like I don't have an upload schedule. And so in that sense, I scrutinize it because I give it more care. It's not to say like I don't ever put out things or send things to clients that I don't think are good and like, you know, solid.
No, of course.
But it's just in terms of like being able to have that extra flexibility. I definitely do. Cause you know, presentation is everything. And like if you have the ability to like fully control creatively what you're doing, then why not use it and make everything that you create a reflection of like how much you care, you know, and how much you value like what you do and how you want that to reflect on yourself, which sounds kind of like weirdly like religious or ideological, but it's really not. It's just like making things good, you know?
No, of course. It's what it boils down to. Yeah. And our final question that we have here isn't really a question. I think it's a demand. I'm pretty sure it's a demand. It's from Kinjiro, our friend Brandon. Noah Samsen mustache routine, please.
Please. Yeah. So what's up, Brandon? Thanks for the clippy art. My boy, shout out. Mustache, think really hard about growing it, and then you grow it and boom. It's so simple. It's so easy. Use a little use a little conditioner in there. I for the longest time had trouble with my mustache because I would trim it with a beard trimmer.
Oh, okay. What
that would mean is when I was trimming side to side, I would like cut it too short on one side, and then I would end up cutting it too short on the other, and it would end up being a very small, you know, suspiciously small mustache, and so I'd have to shave it off. And right. I looked it up on YouTube recently. I was like, how do you actually cut a mustache? And a guy had scissors, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. You can use scissors. And so I started using scissors. So excited about that. Excited for my future as a man with a mustache that never has to be shaved off. It can be there forever. So
scissors, people, scissors.
Yep.
Well, Noah, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. I feel like you gave me more information than I know what to do with. This is going to be hilarious to edit and post because I'm going to hear so many snippets of information that I wish I expanded upon. But who knows? I might ask you to be on the podcast again some other time down the line if you're comfortable with that. But I really appreciate your time, man.
Would love to. Yeah, dude, thanks for having me on. Glad we got to do this, and would love to do it again. And yeah, you should do a highlight reel at the end of all the coughs that you have to cut. Make sure you save those and then put them right at the end. And I'll do a couple here too.
Okay. Well, if you like what you heard today and you want to hear more stories and tips from editors across the YouTube platform, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. I'm aiming to put out 2 of these a month at the very least. We're aiming for weekly, but it all depends on reception. So thank you once again, Noah, for coming on the podcast, and I'll see you guys next time. Until then.
Thank you. Bye-bye.